second visit. The first time I came was I think 3 or 4 years ago for a selection, and today I also have come for a selection. I forget to use the mic. I keep talking and I forget. But it's good to be here in a new university, and your chair has asked me to, and he's given me a blank check. He said you can talk about anything you want to, but that I think is quite difficult, because when you have a blank check you don't know what to do with the money. There's so much to spend. What I'm going to try to do is basically talk about myself, but not directly, about learning English literature and the language in the best possible way. And I'll talk for about 15-20 minutes, then I'll ask you to ask me some questions. And then we can talk, and the faculty can join in if and when they want to. So let me just talk for about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll see how it turns out. Because we don't have much time. I was told that I should be leaving by 4:30, 4:45. So there's not much time left. Well, first of all, if you take my student years, I've been in English in the English department for 49 years now. I started off in 1969, and 69 to 71, and then 71, of course, everything was shut down, and then 72 to 73, I was quite an ordinary, average student. But I came from an English medium background, so my English was always good. And I came from a very good school, I should add. But I wasn't interested in studies at all. I was interested in sports more than anything else. I was crazy about football and basketball. Basketball was my #1 sports. But in 73, one of my friends persuaded me that I should get serious, because all of us wanted to be in the administrative service, and there was no administrative service. So my friend said, you better start studying seriously, because we want to go abroad. And that is when I went to the Dhaka University Library, and I discovered literary criticism. I had always read. In our school, in my house, we had a reading culture in my house. We had a culture of music and songs in the house, and our school encouraged reading. And it's not like now here. In our school, memorizing is discouraged. But when I went to the Dhaka University Library and I started to study, I discovered the word of literary criticism, something which was completely unknown to me previously. And as it happens in literature, or any other subject, I think, one book leads to another book. One idea leads to another idea. One writer leads to another writer. And in that way, I slowly started to move. Then I accelerated, moved faster and faster. And then I traveled in worlds and worlds and worlds on a magic carpet. The magic carpet being the library, which took me from place to place. So I would say that in the 2.5 years, 1.5 year from my honors, when I started to become serious, and then in the 1 year of my MA class, I read hundreds and hundreds of books. I would go there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would come out when the call came from the university mosque, and the azan would come out and we would be asked to leave. You might think that was boring, but actually I thought it was wonderful. I still feel very nostalgic about those days, and I would like to point out that studying can be a pleasure, and this discovery of the world of knowledge can be wonderful. To me, nobody asked me to study so hard. I did it because I started discovering the world through books. And so I read a lot. I read the books in my syllabus, and our syllabus in those days Adil will know, is nothing like the syllabus you have. You people have it easy. You have a very simple, short syllabus. For example, in my MA class, I know that there are no MA students here, but in my MA class for D.H. Lawrence alone, I read I think 1500 pages, minimum. And that was one of 8 authors in the modernism paper, right? And for T.S. Eliot, I not only read Prufrock and The Wasteland, but the 4 quartets and a lot of other poems, Cheronshan, Ash Wednesday and so on. But as I said before, as you read, and if you read sensitively, reading is no longer a burden. It is no longer a chore imposed on you. You discover a world which is, I think, limitless. So that, on the one hand, I'm talking about text. On the other hand, as I began to read criticism, I discovered the world of criticism. In our university library and also in the British Council, there was this volume of literary criticism which was written by a group of English critics based in Cambridge, and these were available in 20 volumes in Scrutiny, 20 fat volumes, and I think I read most of the 20 volumes. And again, nobody asked me to, and I didn't really need to for my examinations. But it's just that I started to read, and I read, and I read, and the more I read, the more I wanted to read. You know, it was like a world which was expanding endlessly, right? And I think in the end, I gained a lot. So, subsequently, when I joined Dhaka University, and remember, I'm using only myself as an example. I'm not saying that you should be like me. I'm not saying that at all. It's just that I know myself more than anyone else in the world. And so the experience comes, the examples will come from me. So I'm not saying that this was ideal and I did perfectly. I'm not saying anything like that at all. But I think what I discovered then is what is now known as closed reading. Because F.L. Lewis and Queenie D. Lewis and the other critics, Elsinites, a few others, who edited the journal, Scrutiny, which I think you can get online if you Google, in the 20 volumes of Scrutiny, they represented the English version of practical criticism, right? And the American version is known as New Criticism. And I think in your MA class you might have this paper on literary theory, if you haven't had it at the 3rd year or the 4th year honors level of literary criticism. And to this day, I think that this was the best thing that I could do. In those days there was no literary theory as such. There was theory, but most of them, Adorno and Lukács, all of them had written in German and they were being translated, and we had not discovered them in Bangladesh. So it was basically, what we were learning was practical criticism. There's another name for practical criticism, probably a better name, and that is closed reading. In other words, if you want to be good students of literature and also of the English language, what I think is a very good way to come across it, or even Bangla, if you are going to study Bangla literature. I've often been asked this question, what makes me a translator of a certain capacity, certain qualities, certain standing. And I think that is because I'm a good close reader. My Bangla is, I am ashamed to say, not good enough. I need a dictionary all the time. When I was translating Vishad Sindhu, I used to go to the dictionary because of the Tatshomo Shabdos. I had to go to the dictionary at least 4 or 5 times for one sentence. And he had these long sentences, So, even now, because now I'm translating Rabindranath's song lyrics, Gans, obsessively. I translate them obsessively. I just do them because I love them. I don't care whether I'm going to be publishing them or not. But even with Rabindranath's song lyrics, especially his early songs, he uses what we would now call poetic diction. In other words, a lot of these words are not current anymore. The later Rabindranath changed, but the earlier Rabindranath tended to use that. So I still have to go to the dictionary a lot for Rabindranath. But what makes me, I think, very competent in translation is my capacity to read closely. So I suggest that all of you learn how to read closely. Now, what is close reading? Reading like that. Reading so that every line is taken into account. Reading so that you read not for content alone. Unfortunately, in Bangladesh, in the examinations, the questions that are set in the way literature is taught, most of the questions are centered around theme. But in close reading, it's not theme that is important. It's form and the connection between form and content. In other words, every content must have its adequate, appropriate form. There's an essay, famous essay called Appropriate Form. So, what I think I learned in those years is to understand this organic relationship. Coleridge says in the biography Literaria, he talks about the organic nature of a poem. And so the organic nature of a work of art, the connection between form and content, where the ideal, the Grecian urn, for example, becomes a work of art, a thing of beauty, a thing of permanent value. Not because of the content alone, because anybody else could have said the same thing in prose, but because of the way it is said, because of the imagery that is used, because of the sound elements in it, because of the use of syntax where there are parallel structures, because of assonance and consonant alteration, because of any numbers of things from simile to metaphors to personification to synecdoche to metonymy or whatever. And that is what I learned actually on my own. My teachers did not teach it to me. I learned it on my own by reading Lewis and the writers of close reading, and also the American New Critics, Clean Brooks, Robert Penn Allen, and the essays collected in the 20th century views, the 20th century interpretations later on in Casebook. And I think I schooled myself in such a way, and this is what I recommend that you do, that you read the text closely, not once, not twice, a number of times. As I said, you're lucky. We had at least 5 times the text you had in any paper. But read them again and again, and then learn how to read them closely. Read them for content, read them for form, read them for technique, read them for the art in them, read them for the aesthetic elements in them, read them for structure. And if you do that, then I think you will be able to develop your reading skills, your writing skills. It's not that difficult. It sounds like a big task. It isn't. As I said, you have to like what you're doing and you have to keep reading. So my recommendation to students and also to teachers, I think, is to learn to read closely, learn to appreciate form, technique, structure, content, read these basic texts, and that way you become much better students of literature. Whether you're a teacher or whether you're a student, you become a much better student of literature. Now, this is what I learned before I went abroad. In 1978, I went to Canada to do my master's and to do my PhD. And immediately, the first semester, I was introduced to the world of theory. But the first semester in theory, there was a student from West Bengal who became a very good friend, Gautam Kundu, who's now teaching in an American university and who's from St. Xavier's College, a very famous college in Kolkata. And he used to teach there also. He was a graduate of the school I knew. And Gautam and I would literally kanakati kortam, because we were taken to this world of theory. I was a teacher and I already had this good background, good results, good background. He had a very good background. And here we were in theory with Marxists and feminists. And this hard text, we read Adorno, for example, for the first time, Adorno and Horkheimer. And we could not understand anything. And here were these people talking intelligently and arguing with each other and debating. And their MA classes are not like MA classes here. There the teacher says nothing. The teacher just introduces the text, and then students get at each other, trying to impress the teacher. So the teacher has a wonderful job. He begins the class and ends the class, and the teachers do everything. And I had my copy of Adorno and Horkheimer. I don't have it anymore. But I had ended up, I have a habit of underlining books. And I ended up in underlining the whole book, the dialect of enlightenment, more or less, with a few lines left out here and there. But I think that is the next step for English students, especially literature students, but even language students. I think that one of the problems that I've seen with my ELT students and colleagues in Dhaka University and elsewhere is that they're very poor in theory. And if I ask them to read theory, they'll say, "Oh, theory ache." But what they don't understand, even after I try to teach them, is not theory does not belong to the literature department. Theory does not belong to the ELT department. In fact, the great theorist Derrida is a philosopher. Foucault does not even fit into any category. He is a professor of the system of thought. Althusser is a philosopher. Poetic is a sociologist. In other words, theory is interdisciplinary. And reading theory, even though it was painful, even though I gritted my teeth and read theory, I think helped me in innumerable ways. Reading Marxism, reading Freud. In Dhaka I had read Marxism and Freud, but now I read with a much more mature understanding. And I think it allowed me to become a complete intellectual, at least by Bangladeshi standards. I don't want to compare myself with the world outside, but I think as far as Bangladesh is concerned, because I decided a long time back I want to come back and I want to teach in Bangladesh and not go anywhere, I think I prepared myself fully. So if I use my example, this is what I'd like you to understand, that first of all of you should read a lot, read extensively, read indiscriminately. I often ask my teachers, what do you read? And they don't read English language newspapers. I would say read English language newspapers, read The Economist. I always tell my students, you must read The Economist. The Economist is not only about economics. The Economist has the best English prose in journalism, and they claim it, they boast about it. Go online and read whatever you can get of the New York Times, the Times Literary Supplement, the Guardian. Read them regularly. Read contemporary literature. Read contemporary literature in English, novels. Read poetry if you love poetry. Read plays if you are into plays. Keep reading indiscriminately. Keep reading the syllabus closely. Keep reading outside the syllabus, not that closely. But remember that this kind of knowledge is cumulative. It won't come to you like that, but it will keep accumulating, and until you come to a point where you will develop into a reasonably good teacher. And most important, it's going to improve your writing, it's going to improve your reading abilities, it will improve your ability to interpret, it will improve your ability to do well in examinations. Because if you don't, I don't know about other examiners, but if the student I look at, if the writing is poor, I will not give the student a first class. I'll never give the student a first class. The writing has to be good as the content, So I would say that do that. Once you acquire more expertise, start reading literary criticism, and then ultimately the last step is to read theory. And then once you've read theory, theory is like a window. And so you look up at the window and you see one view, and if you look at that window, you look at another view. You get another view. And so if you think of that text as your object, what you want to see, if you look at that text from the psychoanalytic point of view, you'll see one thing. If you look at it from the Marxist point of view, you'll see another thing. And with that, it seems to me that you'll be ready to read. If those of you are going to be teachers, you'll be ready to publish and publish quality articles. But you'll have to keep reading the latest criticism, which thankfully for all of you is available online. In Jessore, I'm talking to the teachers now, and elsewhere. But there's so much material available in Google as well as in Jessore that I think you're all very lucky. So many things are available on PDF, so many notes. Read notes, because notes can't damage you. A lot of teachers say don't read notes, I'll say read notes, but write in your own language. So in short, because he told me about this the other day, and I still did study, in short, this is what I would ask you to do as a teacher of 43 years of experience now, and a student as a teacher of 49 years of experience. This is what I would like you to do. I'll stop there, see if there are any questions, take some questions, and then that's it. Right. And the rest is silence. And one or two students that ask questions on our birokta. Learn to ask questions. Your English will only improve. And when you ask questions in sentences. Don't use fragmented English. Fragmented sentences.
Sir, may I ask you?
Sure.
Okay, sir. Sir, you said about a lot of reading. And so that is the only thing that can create a good student and a good teacher too, sir. But in this postmodern age, we have sir, so much distractions. Not only the teachers, the students more. Like the social medias, televisions, and all these things. So how can we maintain our ability to read with keeping everything in a balance, or have we to choose anything that I have to leave social media and I have to read? So is that the way, or can we balance it in different
ways? It's a good question, and I'd say that social media to the serious student of literature or language should be a supplement, and not, it should not overwhelm everything else. The written word is still important, and you can read the written word online. You can form Facebook groups. When I teach, if you can go to Facebook and see the group that I created in Dhaka University, Introduction to Poetry, and you can still see how that is used. So you can use that, how students are contributing to it, not teachers, but students. So you can use social media. You can go to YouTube and listen to lectures. There's such a wealth of lectures on any topic. So you can use. It depends on how serious you are about studying. But if you use Facebook only for friendship and at a superficial level, that's your problem. I'm assuming that you want to improve. And if you want to improve, social media can be a friend. So you can use it in any number of ways. And I use it in the classroom. I make groups. Whenever I go and teach something, I use Facebook groups now. And I ask students to contribute. I ask them to go to wiki and other sites and download things and put it in the E101 or E203, whatever course I'm teaching. I tell them to people it. And I use it in classroom. I use multimedia in the classroom in all kinds of ways. And of course, you can use it for presentations. So it should be a complement to your reading and writing. It should be an extension of that.
So I have a question. So actually I teach. May I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
So actually I teach cultural studies. I'm in the course. There are lots of discussions about how culture of consumption and postmodernity. So I find it very hard to connect it with the context that I'm living in, I'm teaching. The students are also living, as like this is Jessore, and there are very less scope of those kind of postmodernity or culture of consumption. Very less scope. I'm not saying there is no scope, but very less scope of this kind of practices and this kind of discussions. It's very, very narrow.
Okay, I get your question.
So how can I actually contextualize?
I can answer it easily.
Yes.
I have actually taught cultural studies.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, I think I was the first to do that. Let's take the World Cup, or let's take cricket in Bangladesh. Use that in the classroom for cultural studies. What ads do you see? Who's selling patriotism?
Yes.
Well, tell me, who's selling patriotism?
Patriotism, sir.
Who's selling patriotism while in the cricket match? Who has got the national flag? Tell me that, answer that.
The players?
No, Gramin phone.
Yes,
Roaming. Right?
Yes,
so, that is cultural studies.
Yes,
what is the ideology of cricket? Why is one-day cricket, T20 cricket popular? Why is cricket usurped football as the #1 sports of Bangladesh? Why is the World Cup football important, and in Dhaka Stadium when they have football, you see empty galleries? that is what cultural studies should teach you. Cultural studies will teach you, and if you read, I don't know, and the others properly, you will realize that this is all ideology. And that is what cultural studies teaches you, to deconstruct and add. Like the Bangladeshi flag being taken by people, and this is a Robi ad, or this is a Grameen phone ad. And you realize that they are using patriotism to sell their products, and they're all multinationals. So if I taught cultural studies and I've taught it, this is how I would teach it, right? I would show how it's relevant to us here at the moment, because we are all victims, we are all being interpellated, we are all being made into consumers. We have all fallen into a consumer trap. Why is football more important, less important than why do we have so much coverage of World Cup football and nobody wants to watch football? Because the ad companies are interested in cricket, because in cricket every over you can have 3 ads. In football you can't have 3 ads. So once you start asking questions like that, answering that, you realize that the field is here, it's not elsewhere. And you can use any text as cultural studies. Why is Humayun Ahmed more popular?
Yes.
Why isn't somebody else like Teresa and Elias given their prominence? Again, cultural studies will answer that. You understand?
Yes, sir. I got my answer. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll ask. Take a question, then we'll go to you.
How can you understand that this idea of aporia from this one is coming?
Plato's idea of aporia. Is it Plato or is it Freud?
Sir, aporia.
I haven't read Plato on this, but Freud, forgetting.
Yes, sir. It begins this idea.
Yeah. So I know about Freud, so I can't really talk
Sir,
about
this
Plato. How can we use it in?
from postmodernist perspective. That is about puzzle labor, is about unfolding debate or unending solution.
Well, Freud says somewhere, forgetting is not trying to remember, right? And so, let's say, for example, 1971, when Bangabandhu was killed, right?
95.
What we had in this country was collective amnesia, right? There was an attempt to forget. And aporia is a blank spot. It is as if you have reached something that you don't want to go beyond, right? You let it overwhelm you. So we can see again in culture, again and again, such moments occurring when there's a collective amnesia or there's an aporia. And I don't know about the Plato thing, but if I used Freud, this is what I would do. I would use moments like that in our history and culture to explain that. And of course, in literature and literary criticism, the idea of aporia is used to look at the unsaid, or to explore the unconscious of the text, which the text goes beyond a point and does not go beyond that. And reconstructionists have also used that. So, it has been made very good use of. As Spivak has made very good use of it in Camel Sabat to speak in other text. Okay. Yes. I hope that answers the question, but that's as much as I
Sir, most of the cases we see some famous writers, in their writings there are grammatical mistakes. That means they don't bother in conformities. Some famous writers don't bother grammatical function, or they write what they think and believe.
Okay, I'll answer that easily. Nani, তুমি আর প্রশ্ন করতে চাও? I think I understand it perfectly. আমি একটু বাংলায় বলি এখন। এই প্রশ্ন আমাকে অনেকবার করা হয়েছে, এবং এই প্রশ্নের উত্তর দিতে গেলে আমি আমার প্রিয় রবীন্দ্রসঙ্গীত শিল্পী দেবব্রত বিশ্বাসের কথা নিয়ে আসি। দেবব্রত বিশ্বাসকে নিয়ে আমি অনেক বছর আগে, দেবব্রত তোমরা হয়তো জানো না, এই জেনারেশন দেবব্রতকে ভুলে গেছে, কিন্তু এখন পর্যন্ত ওর রেকর্ড সবচেয়ে বেশি বিক্রি হয়। তো দেবব্রত বিশ্বাসকে তার জীবনের শেষ সময়ে রেকর্ড করতে দেওয়া হয়নি। বিশ্বভারতীর সঙ্গীত ওদের কপিরাইট ছিল, ওরা বলেছে যে দেবব্রত গ্রামার ভাঙে। এই প্রশ্নটা সঞ্জিতা খাতুনকে করা হয়েছিল, আমি ঢাকা টেলিভিশন শুনেছিলাম যে দেবব্রত গ্রামার মানে না, গ্রামার নাম মেনে সে গান করে, সেই জন্য বিশ্বভারতী বোর্ড দেবব্রতকে গান রেকর্ড করতে দেয়নি। উনি উত্তরটা সরাসরি দেননি যে উনি এটা কি মানেন না, ব্যাপারটা ঠিক না ঠিক, কিন্তু উনি বলেছিলেন এই কথাটা ইজ আ ভেরি গুড আনসার টু ইউর কোয়েশ্চেন, যে নিয়ম জানে সে নিয়ম ভাঙতে পারে, যে নিয়ম জানে না তার নিয়ম ভাঙার কোনো অধিকার নেই। You realize writers have what they call a poetic license. But a poetic license is not a license you and I can get. To acquire the poetic license, you have to master poetry. You have to be an expert in poetics. And that involves Devike kache prarthana kora. It involves, paying homage to the muse. In other words, it means mastering poetry. So I would say that only those people, even postmodernists, the great postmodernists are all brilliant writers, and they cut across syntax because they know what they're doing. So if you don't know what you're doing and you're abusing grammar, you should be there should be a fine against you. I would say that you have no right to do that. Fragments can be used in a sentence. There is a wonderful go to the internet and read Barthel, this great postmodernist writer, Donald Barthel, B-A-R-T-H-E-L-A-B. And in Dhaka University we teach this 4-page story called Sentence. And you'll see that the whole story is a story. It begins with your capital letters, it ends without a full stop. And the whole thing is one long sentence. And the whole is parodying all the rules of sentences we are taught in school. Right? But he's doing it as a genius, as an expert, as a great master of sentence writing. Right? Sorry to be that easy. Alright, I think we'll have 1 or 2 more questions.
Sir, we know that you are a famous translator. We heard about from our honorable body, sir, and we know that sometimes we have faced the problem about 2 methods, sense for sense method and word for word method. Sometimes we amalgamate both the method. So what's the way to
Yes, I understand that. Again, no, I understand that. It's a good question, and I've been asked that often. In Khulna, I think I was asked this question, and in other places. Now, I would go back to my previous answer. I would say, Bosho, I didn't understand. I would say that as a translator, I can only talk about myself, and I'll talk about my very famous colleague in Dhaka University, Kaisar Haq. I would say that there is a big difference between him and me. I translated, for example, Vishak Shindu, and he translated Monisha Mongol Kapoor, right? And
Monisha Mongol Kapoor.
Monisha Mongol Kapoor. I'm thinking Monisha title Snake Goddess, the Snake Goddess. And the difference between the two of us explain clearly, and is a very good answer to your question. I try to translate sentence by sentence, trying to stick as closely as I can to the original. Kaisar is a poet, and Kaisar thinks he has the license of a poet, and so his translation takes a lot of license, and so at times Monisha Mongol Kapoor is sort of like Hindi cinema serial. And he translates that as a Hindi cinema serial. And I think it's wonderful. You can Google and look at my review of it. I think it's brilliant, actually, the translation. It's come out from Harvard University Press. But because I'm not a creative writer, I don't dare do that. I try to stick to the original as much as I can. But you cannot have word-for-word translation. And sense-for-sense translation, I think, is best for creative writers. To me, I would like to strike a compromise. Try to stick to the word and sentence as closely as possible, but I know that you can't have word-for-word translation. Right? So it depends, and translations will vary. That is why the same text has been translated in innumerable ways, because translations vary in their approach. Okay, so there's no one way of translating. I think somebody else.
I have to know.
Okay.
course.
So, 15 years old literary writings, can I translate but by containing contemporary society or contemporary culture?
Again, my previous question will answer that. For example, in Vishwas Sindhu, I didn't try to do that. But when I read Vishwas Sindhu, I could see parts which are post-colonial, very clearly. And I could see parts which dealt with depression. There's a wonderful part where Zainab is cooking. And as I read it, it seemed to me charged with eroticism. And I was reading it from a Freudian angle. And so when I translated it, those things came and influenced me. You understand? So it could have been a 19th century text about 7th century Arabia. It didn't matter to me at all. As I read it, I began to read it in my frame. And my translation was affected by it.